Hi, my name is Madeleine Holly-Rosing, the writer, creator of the steampunk supernatural series, Boston Metaphysical Society. Welcome to our Kickstarter to print our brand new story, Ghosts and Demons, along with the first ever Boston Metaphysical coloring book. For those of you who are not familiar with the series, it's about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. In the new story, Caitlin and Alma have continued Mary and Frida's work as union organizers, but Caitlin has a disturbing dream about her childhood friend, Duncan the Ghost. This has her worried, so they decide to return to Boston to find out what's wrong. Though it's a happy reunion with Samuel and Granville, something much more sinister awaits them and the team. Now, the story is 35 pages long and is in a 44-page perfect bound book. Gwen Tavares is also back on board doing the art and coloring. For the coloring book, we have 20 wonderful illustrations done by Alejandro Lee, and it is suitable for all ages. The best part is that both books will be ready to go to the printer by the end of the campaign. And for those of you who are new to the Boston Metaphysical universe, the trade paperback of the original series will be available, as well as our sequels, Scourge of the Mechanical Men and The Spirit of Rebellion. So please take a look at the reward tiers on our Kickstarter homepage and pledge today. Thank you in advance for your support.
Have all of these been done by Kickstarter? Have they all started in that respect?
No. We self-funded the first 3 issues before we went to Kickstarter because we felt we needed to have something more to show to a potential audience. And though even with that, I'll say that the first time we launched on Kickstarter, we failed, like a lot of people do. And I learned a lot. So, and I say we because my husband has to live through this with me.
Sure.
I mean, this is number 8 for me that we're doing right now. So we're well versed on how this all works, and it's less stressful than in the early days. But so yeah, we sat down and figured out a better strategy, and so when we relaunched a couple months later, we were fully funded in under 48 hours. And so I've been trying to keep that. This one was funded in under 72 hours, but we were also asking for more money, so that's okay.
Now, when you did this first one, the first time you ever did this, do you feel like there was anything you could take from that experience that you applied to the next one and the next one going forward? Or did you just willy-nilly just go for it and see how it went, and then from there kind of redesigned how you did the next one?
There was a very deliberate strategy when we did the second one. We realized, well, let me explain. The first one, we had the first 3 issues. It was a 6-issue miniseries. So what we were attempting to do was fully fund the production of the last 3 issues plus printing. And we actually did okay for no one knowing us at all. I think we ended up with over 200 backers and making over $7,000, but we were asking for 25, which for what we were trying to do was a reasonable number. But that didn't work. So what we did is we broke it into smaller bits, and we did it chapter by chapter. And that seemed to work beautifully. So we went back to just print chapter 3, and we actually had a stretch goal in there that if we did well enough, we would include printing chapter 4. And that worked. We got the money for that. So we were able to print both 3 and 4 with that second Kickstarter. And that's what we've done ever since. We've done it in incremental parts. And so that was a big learning curve that we took away from it. And the second big one was that I really needed an email list of the fan base to get to them immediately after we launched, to just kind of get out of the box quickly, fund quickly, and keep that upward trend throughout what we call the doldrums or the dead zone,
Yeah.
which is very quickly approaching right now. It'll really happen in about a week. And so you can push forward through that.
Uh-huh. Is it super important to reach a certain percentage right off the bat? Is it, like you were mentioning, 48 hours you have a goal, 72 hours you funded the last this one here. Is it super important? Do you look at trying to reach a percentage by the first couple days? Is that what really separates good Kickstarters from bad ones?
Yes, absolutely. If you've done your homework and the work, you should be able to fund 35 to 50% of your funding goal within the first 3 days. And, at least 35%, because that way, quite probably by the end of the first week, you'll be at 50%. And that gives you enough momentum to keep you going to fund. If you're doing a 30-day Kickstarter, that will usually give you enough momentum to take you to the end. Just because Kickstarter, unlike Indiegogo and other platforms, has a community of backers. And in fact, they have what I often call I call them weekend warriors. I follow a bunch of people on Kickstarter, and on the weekends, it notifies me of what they backed. And so I'll see one person has backed like 12 to 20 Kickstarters.
Wow.
And I mean, I don't know how much money they're putting in, but that's what they do. I mean, for some people, that's their entertainment, I think. And they really enjoy not only what the creators are doing, but they enjoy being part of the process. And that's really important. Because in fact, the backers are, in a certain respect, part of the process here. Without them, we wouldn't exist. We just wouldn't. And most of us would not. So I love my backers.
Nice. So you did investigate other crowdfunding sources.
Yes.
Beyond Kickstarter. Have you ever run a campaign simultaneously with another one, or has it always been exclusively with Kickstarter?
Well, Kickstarter doesn't allow you to run simultaneous campaigns. They kind of frown on that.
Sure.
I've run what's called an in-demand campaign on Indiegogo. I did that once, and that's by invitation only. And what happens is that depending on how well you do on Kickstarter, Indiegogo will send you a note that you've been invited to be part of the in-demand program to essentially keep your campaign going, if you want to do that. For me, it lacks the urgency that having a time lock, like, the 30 days gives you. And also, I wasn't real wild about the back-end administration of Indiegogo. I found it to be very user hostile. And it just, I put so much work and effort into the Kickstarter that when we fund, I want to be done.
Sure.
And start fulfillment get everybody their stuff.
So go take us through the process, if you don't mind, of how you prepare, a pre-production of a Kickstarter. How do you get it going? What do you do specifically that really gets it honed in and started before you actually hit that button to say, okay, 30 days is going now?
Well, I will say this is all covered in my book, Kickstarter for the Independent Creator.
Nice.
But
sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's covered in more detail than I'll go into now. I actually prep months ahead of time. I already am working on the script, figuring out what the story is, taking it to beta readers, getting, the artist locked down for when we're going to start. And then and that's like almost a year, 6 to 9 months out, at least. And then about 3 to 4 months, I'll start talking about it in Kickstarter updates and in my newsletter, just getting people's heads ready for it. that it's coming. And then, every month I'll give them a little more detail as I have it. I'll give them previews of the pages, panels, additional artwork, reminding them that, it's coming in a particular month, usually January. And then by December, I will have figured out an actual date. So I'll announce the actual date. But in the meantime, on top of that, I will have been going to cons, building my email list, connecting out with other people.
Give me an idea of a percentage of how many people you see doing the Kickstarter over and over again, contributing over and over again. What would you say your percentage of backers are from previous Kickstarters?
Pretty high. I'd say probably about 50%.
So it's all about getting that first initial group, and then, making sure that you run with them and keep them up to date, and like you said,
not just them, but making sure your work is, you have high quality work that they want to come back for.
Sure. Yeah, that's important, right? The art is important eventually.
Yeah. That they care about what you're doing, they care about your characters, they care about your story. Obviously that's, number one, but also fulfillment. My backers know that they will get their stuff, and 99.9% of the time they will get it on time. Occasionally there will be a glitch, but most of the time no. And I actually try to get it to them early, if at all possible.
Nice. So would you say that you can be successful? Do you feel like you could possibly just be successful at anything that you wanted to kickstart at this point? Or do you think that it's a specific thing? Is it genre related? Is it media related? What do you think is the key to success in Kickstarter? Is it just learning how to do a Kickstarter, or is it because it's certain art of certain things?
I think it's both. And it falls under the category of it depends. There are some people who manage Kickstarters for a wide variety of projects for other people, and that's kind of a different job it's slightly different than what I do. I am the face of Boston Metaphysical Society.
Right.
And when they see the name, it's a brand now, for lack of a better term, that it means, steampunk supernatural. So if, say, I were going to launch another comic, under my name, my real name, which it is, that if it weren't steampunk, then probably not everybody from before would come on board, because it's just not their thing, which is totally fair.
Sure.
But if it was close enough in genre, strong female, I hate that term, complex female protagonist. Yeah, I actually hate the term strong female protagonist, because that doesn't really mean anything. Then I'd probably get some decent crossover. But I have branded myself, and I realize this, so I kind of need to stay within that range of genre that's related, either supernatural or magic or something like that. And I think a decent percent of backers would come along for the ride to see if they liked it, and then stay if they did. But yeah, there's some people who can kickstart anything, but usually most storytellers will have branded themselves in some fashion in a genre, and that's how people will follow you.
So what I'm gathering from this then is, if you're going to do a Kickstarter, you want to make it open-ended so that you can possibly benefit for future, you want to make sure that you have something that's going to last the test of time, right? So, not just not just a one-off thing. One-off things don't typically get Kickstarter excited. It's usually you want to brand yourself doing this as a series or a multiple, collection of many issues or books or whatever.
Yeah, no, I have some friends and colleagues who say have nailed the horror genre, and that's what their small press does is horror, and they do it really, really well. But that's what people expect from them, and or high action or something. But yeah, no, there's some people I think who could probably kickstart anything, and they're amazing. I'm probably not one of them. Boston Metaphysical, fortunately, we've had people respond really well, and I'm very grateful for that. And so we will keep on going for probably as long as people want to keep reading the comics and the prose and whatever else I churn out.
So you have multiple stories ahead. You have some ideas. Nice. I'm curious too, and I want to preface this by saying sorry, introverts, but I'm curious how much you going out and being in the public eye has helped you with this process. Has that been a huge part of your success?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you a secret. I'm an introvert myself. So it's a matter of training and practice to get out there and, stand behind a table. And I'm saying standing, not sitting, standing behind a table, interacting with people, engaging with them is critical. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually gotten some, great inspiration from talking to fans or sitting around having coffee with them about future storylines, and which to me is really exciting because we're like, I hadn't quite thought about it that way. That's really interesting. Let me go think about that.
Nice. That's awesome. So tell everybody about the Boston Metaphysical Society. Give us an overview of the world and what, if somebody wanted to get into it, what they could expect.
The premise of the series is about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. So think steampunk X-Files. It's an alternate history universe, basically with paranormal and supernatural beings that are a normal part of society. And I do introduce, or rather use as part of the storyline, some famous figures like Bell, Edison, Tesla, and Houdini. They are very much involved in the original 6-issue miniseries. The first standalone, The Scourge of the Mechanical Men, features Tesla and Granville Woods, who's part of the Boston Metaphysical team. And for those of you who don't know, he was a historical figure himself and was a contemporary of Tesla's. I mean, definitely think of it as, X-Files in the late 1800s Boston, but without aliens. No aliens. The current project is called Boston Metaphysical Society, Ghosts and Demons. We have a total of 3 standalone sequels. The first 2, one is The Scourge of the Mechanical Men, also on Kickstarter 2 years ago. Last year we did Spirit of Rebellion, and this year is Ghosts and Demons.
All right. I have to ask because I see you sitting there, and I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask for the audience because they're going to wonder, as we sit here talking, you have a UCLA hat on.
Yes.
And you're in Los Angeles. Why did you choose Boston for your setting?
It was a story decision. When I was first developing the world and the story, I was looking at various cities of where I thought this story should be set. And, Chicago, New York, they were too big. They seemed to be overused. But Boston, when you say the name out loud to an American, Boston gives you a sense of culture and mythology, and it really was a place that needed to be. Plus, it's a very intimate city. So it just worked. So that's just where it needed to be.
Nice. That's awesome. I love that. I mean, Boston is a metropolitan city just like any place else, even in the 1800s, right? I mean, it's the same.
Oh,
It's, you know.
yeah, and it's a real interesting. I mean, I've been there. I also went to school on the East Coast, so I was up and down there a lot. I enjoy Boston. I'd love to go back to. I think it's called Fan Expo Boston sometime soon. That would be fun. I've been to Boston Comic Con a few times, and that's always a treat when I can show up there. I love it, and got a lot of great backers from the Massachusetts area, as you can imagine. And even I'll grab some transplants when I'm at WonderCon or San Diego Comic Con. They'll go like, "Wait a minute, I'm from Boston. What's this about?" And I get to tell them, and it's a lot of fun. And you'll have hints of stuff. There's stuff in the background that a Bostonian would recognize, which is always. I would make sure the artist would like, okay, I need you to put XYZ building in the background here because I know a Bostonian's going to recognize it.
That's awesome. So give us a little bit of a preview of your book. Talk a little bit about what people can get out of your Kickstarter book. I'm curious about that and what, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of an outline of that book and what we can expect if we were to pick it up.
The Kickstarter book is what I call essentially a field guide to running a crowdfunding campaign. It does reference comics because obviously that's what I do, but the strategies involved are good for any campaign whatsoever. They're broken down into how to build a fan base, pre-launch strategy, campaign strategy, fulfillment, dealing with trolls, and the second edition, which is up on Amazon now, references films and anthologies and novels as well, in case you're coming into it from that, because it's always good to look at and dissect a successful campaign of what you're doing, whether it's, like I said, a novel, an anthology, or a film. I actually used to teach crowdfunding classes over at Pulp Fiction Comics in Culver City, and we get a wide variety of people there, either in film, sometimes in music, audiobooks, and so it was real interesting. But like I said, the strategies are the same.
What do you think is the number one mistake people make? You obviously have seen other crowdfunders. You've always seen other Kickstarters. So what do you feel like is the number one thing you see that people do all the time that you go, oh, stop doing that?
They don't have a decent email list in order. Usually enough potential backers where you're 99% sure they're going to back, that will fund you up to 35% of whatever your funding goal is. Because I can kind of see that when I go to someone's campaign and they're just like slowly eking it out. And I just look at it and go like, oh, this is really nice, but they clearly weren't prepared, or they didn't prepare the audience they have. And sometimes people have the audience, but they don't know how to get the word out to them effectively.
Interesting. That's awesome. I'm curious too. You mentioned that there's all kinds of different backers and different ways to back things and different types of media to back. But is there a community of crowdfunders out there? Do you all support one another? Is that important? Because like in our indie community, it's important for us to all support each other and buy other people's stuff as well as and read other people's stuff as well as write our stuff and promote our stuff. Is it the same within the crowdfunding community?
It is within the independent comic community. Absolutely. We will cross promote. I can't back every campaign because sure. my budget is not endless, and I know other people can't back but we do other things. We will cross promote during updates. And I found that to be highly effective. And so you start working with people who you think would complement your campaign. And when you do an update notifying your backers of whatever relevant information they should know, you just add a couple other, recommended Kickstarters that they might be interested in. And I've found that to be very helpful. But yeah, I spend some time looking at other campaigns, and fortunately I have enough friends now, so they'll go like, hey, I get a message, I hear you're going to be launching in January, do you want to cross promote? And I'll say, yeah, sure, and I put them on my list.
That's awesome. Do you promote through your newsletter and stuff like that, other campaigns and things like that?
I don't usually do that through my newsletter. Because I actually think it's more effective doing it through a Kickstarter update, because you're directly communicating with people who are already on Kickstarter, who have clearly already backed something. A lot of times in the newsletters, because my newsletters are also are broader. They don't just hit comic people. Since I have a novel, they also hit novel people who don't necessarily may not care about Kickstarter at all. But yeah, I have other uses for the newsletter.
That's what I was hoping you would say. that makes a lot of sense. It's just the community stays. I mean, it's obviously you want to hit your target, and it's about Kickstarter is really about target marketing, right? It's really about finding that target and then honing it in and taking advantage. Well, taking advantage of it's a bad way to put it, but really getting involved in it and sinking into it really helps the entire community as a whole, not just yourself. And then you benefit from that sinking into it, right?
Yes. I mean, I believe in the win-win scenario, that we can all lift each other up. And that has worked out very well for me. And I hope for other people as well, because, we've been doing well. And so the people I cross promote have a pretty decent well to draw from when I promote them. So hopefully some of my backers will be interested in what they're doing.